My name's Tammy Kukoski. I'm married to Joe Kukoski. We have 2 children, 2 boys, and I attend Keystone Church. I grew up in a family that was pretty secular for the most part. We really didn't go to church. A couple times I remember as a kid, my mom trying to get us to go to church, or we'd go. We went to Sunday school a couple times that I can remember, and I just remember being 5 years old and just thinking that the Sunday school teacher was nuts because she's jumping up and down for this guy named Jesus. His picture's on the wall, and I just thought she was crazy. And I'm 5 years old. I didn't get excited about it. Growing up after that, we didn't go to church anymore. Us kids complained enough that my mom stopped trying. So we lived a pretty secular life. There was no mention of God really discussed in the house, except if I'd see my grandmother. Occasionally, she would talk to us about God a little bit, but it was kind of like out of sight, out of mind. It was like in one ear and out the other. I was always very interested in science. I went to college for science. In college, the college I went to, they kind of expand on that a little bit, push that a little bit more. Science is kind of a God in a way. Science answers questions religious people can't, kind of thing. I mean, the religion was never brought up, but it was just feeding into my secularism and lack of belief in God, which I didn't have any. All I know is I was a nihilist, and I didn't even know there was a word for it or what it was. Nihilism is just basically everything's futile. There's no, why do anything? If we weren't put here for a reason, you can make up a reason for your life. You're like, oh, I like to golf, or what? Great, but that's your subjective, view of your life, and that's great and everything, but it's not objectively true. And that's what I was looking for. What is objectively true? Meaning it's true. It's 2 + 2 is 4, whether I believe it or not. That is what is true, and I was looking for that. And from my point of view, what was objectively true was that I was nothing. I was meaningless. I had come to the point when I was in college that I had fallen into a deep depression, and I didn't even know at the time that I probably would have been diagnosed in depression, because I was at a point in my life where if I wasn't sleeping, I was crying. I would wake up, I would realize there's no purpose, no meaning in life, because I didn't believe in God. If we're just here by accident, or they don't like to, a lot of atheists don't like to hear you say the word accident, so I like to say, okay, so we weren't intended then. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes, but if there's no mind beyond this, then there's no intent to it. Okay, so we're unintended then. That's how I try to skirt past that. So it bothered me that I would wake up every day, and no matter what I did, it meant nothing. If I worked, if I made money, it didn't matter. Eventually I was going to die. Everybody was going to die. The world was going to come to an end. So what does it matter to do anything now? And the only thing that could get me out of it was to take my mind off of those thoughts. And that meant going back to school. So I had to go back to school and get my mind in a book and something that was science, something that I had to focus on. And it worked. As soon as I went back to school, I was with my friends from college, I was studying, and I forgot all about that. But it was always there. I had a friend who was, I don't know, I guess she was spiritual. I don't know. I didn't know what any of that meant. I'm just like, whatever. She wanted to take me to church with her. And I was like, oh man. But she was my friend. I was like, all right, I'll go with you. So I go to this church. I don't even know what the church was. Something Christian, something, I go with her. I'm sitting there, and I have this experience at this church. Being a complete atheist, I had this experience at this church. I've never had an experience like this ever. I was about 21. I felt like I was in a bubble of pure love. I have no way to explain. There's no way to describe it. It was overwhelming emotionally. And I left there, during the time, and I don't know how long I was sitting there and how long that occurred, I can't remember. But I began to cry as it was happening. And let me tell you, I'm not even really praying, because I don't believe in this stuff, right? So I began to cry due to all the emotion, just overwhelming. It was just like you were wrapped in this blanket of just like joy and comfort and love. It's just, you could never describe it with your words on earth. And for the next 3 days, I cried. And it was not because I was sad or because I was depressed or anything, or I was mental. It was, I cried for the next 3 days out of pure joy after the third day went away. And I never felt that way again. And so I had that experience, and it was weird, but I wasn't gonna let anything get in the way of how I wanted to live my life. You know, I was like, well, that was crazy and all, and really cool, but I just kind of blew it off. So then I went out into the world, and I was working in scientific field, and I'm working with all these different laboratories, working with different scientists, you know, and I love it because I'm working with these like-minded people, or so I thought. But according to a lot of people out there, they would say that scientists are probably mostly atheists, and maybe they are, I don't know what the numbers are, but from my experience, the scientists I work with, I was one of the very, very few, if not only the one, in the labs I can remember that didn't believe in God. Like, I just couldn't believe it. I remember being at one lab, and I worked with PhDs and doctors and different people of different academic backgrounds, and I was just blown away by their faith. I was just like, what are you, crazy? I was like, you know, science answers questions, you know, that doesn't answer questions. So years down the road, I'm working in this lab, and here I meet this guy named Joe.
I'm Joe Kukowski. I grew up in a Christian household with my mother and my father, and they weren't overbearing. It wasn't like an overbearing kind of thing, but it was a pretty strict Christian household. So I would say for a period of time, high school up into college, I wasn't living as I should have been for Christ, and wasn't a good example. I was in the service. I was in the Pennsylvania National Guard, and I was deployed to Europe after 9/11. And during that time, I had a force protection mission. So basically, we were tasked with securing bases in Europe. And given the schedule that I had, we worked like 12-hour days, but they were day shift or night shift. My schedule was kind of screwy. So I never got to church really for about 7 months. And that was kind of a part of me that was missing, I guess. And some people might say, oh, it's just habit. You're used to going to church from when you're a little kid, and you felt that you needed to do that. But I think it was a little more than that. It was a spiritual calling to come back. And I knew that that part was kind of missing. Currently, I work as a forensic DNA scientist, and my love for that field did not stem anything from a biological aspect of, wow, this is really cool, this biology all around us. Mine was more of, I don't know, task-oriented, or, you know, I wanted a job in that field. That's what I wanted to do. And when I started working at the lab, there was this cute girl that worked over in the lab, and she caught my attention for sure. And I think the coolest thing was we had so much in common, and she loved quads and, you know, ATVs and stuff like that. She had a gun, so that right there was, you know, a big check mark in the checkbox. And but she loved to do a lot of stuff that I love to do, and she wasn't your typical girl. She was definitely special. So Tammy, she was an atheist, and at first, obviously, like, we don't wear a name tag that says, "Hi, I'm Tammy, an atheist," so I had no idea. But she was somebody that I cared about, somebody that I was interested in. So I thought, well, gee, maybe I'll talk to her a little bit and kind of get a feel for where she's at.
He brings this Bible in one day, and he sets it on my desk, and I'm like, I am going to file a lawsuit. No, just kidding. No, but he brought me this Bible, and he had outlined some things, and he put it in there, and I thought to myself, well, that's pretty cool. You know, he cares about me or whatever, and he doesn't want to see anything bad happen. And we really didn't know each other too well, I guess. Then we started dating, and I don't know how long later, and he was starting to talk to me more and more about it. And I thought he was going to be like every other Christian I met, which was pretty much they go to church on Sunday, and after they get out of church, they're doing all the things they shouldn't be doing. They're terrible witnesses. And I can't stress it enough because I'm not perfect at all. And I know I make mistakes, but when I was an atheist, I had a huge problem with Christians because they are so full of it. They were like, oh, I love God, and this is great, and I'm going to go out and gamble and do whatever the heck I'm not supposed to be doing, and I'm going to be a terrible witness for all those who don't know God, right? And I'm like, you're no better than me, you know? Maybe better off, maybe, but not better. Remember when we were at Walmart or something? We're in this parking lot, and he turns his preacher on, like his radio. He has a tape or something. And I'm like, all right, that's it. I was like, I'm out. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I'm never going to be a Christian. And I don't believe in it. There's no logic behind it. And I was like, if that's what you want, if that's what you need to be, because you need to be equally yoked, I was like, I'm not your girl. You know, I'm just telling you now because I care about you. And I don't want to see you end up in a relationship that may end up in divorce. You know, what if we have kids, and you know, and I don't want to raise them this way, and you do, and there's arguments, and it's just bad. He was talking to me, you know, about, and I said to him exactly what I had already talked about as a Christian. I was like, you know what, you're no better than me. You know how many Christians I've met in my lifetime, and none of them. Like, they walk into a church, they're all like, look at me, I'm a Christian, yay, go me. They walk out of there and they're doing nothing different. They're not living any differently than any other person. And he was the first person ever to say to me, you're right.
She was absolutely right about that. You know, and it's a shame. I think we're all guilty of that at times, but our testimony is is exactly that. It's a testimony to the rest of the world. So I wanted to live the best life that I could for her, to show her that we're not all like that, and hopefully I can set a better example for you.
Wow, like that was the first time anybody, because anybody else, if I would ever say that to them, they're like, no, you know, whatever, there'd be an argument or whatever, they would try to justify their behavior, you know. That opened my door right there, because I had finally met somebody who really, truly wasn't just saying they were a Christian. They were actually doing their best to live it. And I actually wanted to know more. Now I'm wanting to seek a little bit more. So I had adhered to positions of materialism and naturalism, you know. I just kind of adhered to that. I'm like, well, that had to be how it happened. And the materialism is that basically everything that is real you can touch, is you can see, it's tangible. And so when I was looking into these philosophers and their argument about scientism, it was basically scientism refutes itself. Can you prove scientism in a laboratory? Can you prove that everything that is true has to be proven in a laboratory? And it wasn't. It couldn't. It was a position. It was a philosophy. It was a belief. So I realized at that moment I had a belief system. I wasn't, because I had always been, you know, prided myself on facts and logic and knowledge and truth, and you know, you could prove this. And I just, at that moment, I realized I was believing in something. I believed that this was true, and there's no scientific, you know, proof of it. And then then I realized materialism. Holy cow, I'm a materialist. There's no proof of that in a laboratory. And then, you know, naturalism and so on. I was like, and my head exploded right then, because I didn't realize I had been accusing these people, what I had been accusing these people of in their belief, and they didn't have proof of anything. I was doing the exact same thing. I no longer had a foundation, a rock solid foundation in my previous worldview. It had been kind of shattered. And, you know, studying with Joe, I was like, And then my experience that I had, you know, that was always kind of there too. And people that had been talking to me over the years and things, it was like God was sending people to me, you know. And then I was like, that's it. So I did. I gave my heart to the Lord.
Yeah, I'll never forget the day when she did accept Christ while she was driving. I remember that. And she called and told me. And I was stunned. I could not believe it. He was working on her. And little did I know he had been working on her for years with the experience that she had where she felt that love. And she had people along the way that would plant little seeds here and there. And I think all that hard work that all those people put in years past led to the harvest that I resulted with, I ended up with. So I thank those people as well for talking to Tammy and kind of putting that in her ear.
I can't imagine a life not like this. I mean, it's great. I don't feel, you know, some people will say, when you believe in that and you're in your religion or whatever, you got to follow all these rules. And, you know, it's not like that at all. And I used to believe that exact same thing. But it's kind of like this. You know, there's rules to getting married. When you're married to somebody, there's rules. They're kind of like unwritten. Maybe you say your vows or whatever. But you're not getting up every day and looking at a book and seeing what the rules are. You abide by the rules not because you're trying to remind yourself of them every day, but because you love that person and you want to please them. And so therefore you make your life to be pleasing for them. And so you'll follow rules like, I'm not going to go cheating on my husband, or I'm not going to do this or that, whatever, you know what I mean? It's the same thing with your relationship with Jesus.